All right, back again. Welcome to the Chinksey Sports Presents the Premier League Show, episode 14. There's gonna be a couple this week. Obviously, there's a lot of football, especially in midweek and then obviously next Saturday. So they're gonna come thick and fast. Anyway, without any further ado, the first game of last week end was at the Etihad, and it was the fixture between Manchester City and Liverpool. That ended one apiece. Man City will be kicking themselves for not killing Liverpool off, but that's football. Erling Haaland became the first fastest player in Premier League history to reach 50 goals in the league, and he beat it by an absolute landslide. Some people have said it's because he's playing for Man City, but so did Sergio Aguero, and there have been other phenomenal teams over the years. In the Premier League and the strikers they've had, they hadn't even have come close to Haaland's record. Players like Harry Kane, Luis Suarez, Thierry Henry, Alan Shearer, and Wayne Rooney, to name but a few. Trent Alexander-Arnold's late equaliser from a Mo Salah assist sums up a man in form and on top of his game. Mo Salah didn't have his best game, but once again gets himself a pivotal goal contribution with another assist in a key game. The next one was the Claret and Blue derby between Burnley and West Ham United. It ended 2-1 to the away side West Ham. Burnley will be kicking themselves at how they let this one slip with 5 minutes to go, as they were leading for most of the second half and just capitulated in the dying embers of the match. After West Ham's Ghanaian forward, Mohamed Kudus came off the bench and turned the game on its head with 2 assists. I guess it's kudos to Mohamed. Claret's fans are still awaiting their first home victory of the season, but they will have a golden opportunity later on today in their relegation 6-pointer clash against Sheffield United at Turf Moor again. Burnley, though, remain rooted to the bottom of the table on 4 points. On the bright side, their youngster Luka Koleosho looked a threat on the left wing, and not only did he win the penalty early in the second half, he showed great courage and attitude throughout. West Ham are 9th and will want to stay close to the coattails of the likes of Brighton, Newcastle and Manchester United in a bid to perhaps sneak into a 6th or 7th place finish. Personally, I think they'll do well to get higher than 8th this season, so their best bet of securing European football for next year will be to lift one of the cups, such as the Carabao Cup, FA Cup, or the Europa League, which they have qualified in pole position, I believe, ahead of Freiburg. Next fixture was at the City Ground between Nottingham Forest and Brighton Hove Albion. Ended 3-2 to Brighton. I thought Brighton would just edge this one, and they did, despite ending the day with 10 men. I've been impressed with the young forwards João Pedro, Ansu Fati and Evan Ferguson, who have all contributed really well in recent weeks, both domestically and in Europe. For me, both penalties look quite soft, and Brighton captain Lewis Dunk getting 2 yellow cards in 30 seconds for dissent was bizarre to say the least. Following that game was at the Kenilworth Road between Luton Town and Crystal Palace. So that's basically south v north. Michael Olise's goal was out of this world. He's a sensational player with techers like Ben Arthur, a player that the streets won't forget in a hurry. Wingers Chedozie, Ogbene and Michael Olise both put in some outstanding balls for their strikers, but one thing this result spelt out was that Luton are going to put up some real resistance against relegation, especially with Everton's points deduction. Rob Edwards' men are hard to beat, especially at home. Arsenal travel there on Tuesday. They look a threat on the counter-attack and from set pieces, and are, of the 3 promoted sides, look the most likely to stay up through sheer organisation. They're currently 4 points clear of the drop zone in 17th, and if they can beat Brentford later on today, it will be massive for them. Following that was a game at St James's Park, a big game between Newcastle United and Chelsea. It ended 4-1 to Newcastle. Newcastle have had some fantastic results at St James's Park this season, and this one just adds to their illustrious list of scalps. The Champions League win against PSG, which also ended 4-1, stands out though. They were also the first and so far the only team to beat table-topping Arsenal in the Premier League, and have also beat the ever so impressive Aston Villa 5-1 on the opening game of the season, a result which by the week is looking better and better. Chelsea fans would have went into this game optimistic that they could get a result following both teams' form going into the international break, but they quickly found out that that was not to be the case. Chelsea captain Reece James' red card gives French youngster Malo Gusto an opportunity to come into the side behind Raheem Sterling on that right flank. There were whispers that Christopher Nkunku would be back in the squad for that game, but it's likely that he'll be on the bench against Brighton tomorrow afternoon. Right. The game at Bramall Lane between Sheffield United and Bournemouth was a rout because I watched that game and Bournemouth tore them to shreds, ended 3-1. Bournemouth look like their good run of form has just come at the right time, especially given Everton's points deduction, which has pushed them further up the table. I feel like the Everton news enabled Bournemouth to play with like a more of freedom, with a releasing of the shackles, so they could really attack Sheffield United. Before too long, it was clear that they wouldn't accept anything other than a win. Bournemouth forwards Antoine Semenyo and Marcus Tavernier absolutely tore the home side apart in what seemed to be an endless barrage of attacks at Wes Fotheringham's goal. Incidentally, the Blades keeper made up for a horror show of a mistake for Kluivert to punish, with a series of saves to keep the scoreline at a mere 3. Before the game, I fancied Sheffield United to nick a draw, but I was way off the mark in this one. So 3-1 to Bournemouth. I believe that's 3 wins from 4 for the Cherries, and they're looking pretty decent to stay up. Next game was the 5:30 kickoff at the G-Tech Stadium between Brentford and Arsenal. It ended 1-0 to Arsenal. Aaron Ramsdale was a bag of nerves in this one, in the first half. Luckily, Declan Rice's anticipation helped him be in the right place at the right time to clear the ball off the line. Throughout the game, Brentford stifled Arsenal and it looked like it would be a stalemate. The home side would have bitten your hand off for a point before the game, but it was a game that was crying out for a plan B from Arsenal. And when Kai Havertz was brought on late on in the second half, it gave them an option to go longer and it worked. Finally, the Kai Havertz scores again chant rings true. A tremendously inviting cross from England winger Bukayo Saka, reminiscent of his cross against Chelsea, was headed in from Havertz to pinch the game for Arsenal, who despite having most of the play were largely subdued by the Bees. Just like I've been subdued by the Bell. I thought this might happen. Yes, we remain live, and we're gonna freestyle while I sort this out. Leave it there. Okay, we are back again. Right, England winger Bukayo Saka, reminiscent of his cross against Chelsea, headed in from Havertz to pinch the game for Arsenal, who despite having most of the play were largely subdued by the Bees. The win was pivotal as it sent the Gunners top of the league for the first time this season, following the 1-1 draw between Manchester City and Liverpool earlier on. So Arsenal went top of the league with that late winner in the 89th minute from Kai Havertz for the first time this season, and they have an opportunity to extend that because Liverpool and Man City play on Sunday, so they could literally go 4 points clear with a win against Wolves. Right, Sunday's fixture for me was the game I was looking forward to the most that week, because I was intrigued to see how Aston Villa would fare against one of the better sides. I felt like Unai Emery played a masterstroke for me here. Bizarrely, Spurs played with 4 fullbacks and 4 wingers, which was a wacky formation to say the least. Eric Dyer was sitting on the bench in a clear indication that he is not rated by the Spurs boss, Ange Postecoglou. I felt that Villa were passive at the beginning of the game and Spurs were playing all the football and took a deserved lead, but I got the feeling that Villa were trying to take the sting out of the game and of Spurs and started playing towards the end of the first half. Through Pau Torres, once again, Spurs probably ran out of steam and got exhausted, ran out of ideas, and Villa just came on strong. In the second half, Unai Emery immediately hooked off the booked Matty Cash and the ineffective Moussa Diaby with an attacking double substitution with Yuri Tielemans and Leon Bailey coming on. 2 players with a chip on their shoulder, 2 players who combined to get the winner. 2-1 Villa. Right, following that game was at Goodison Park, a solid professional performance from Manchester United. This was an example of what I said last week, a match that you think will be close and ends up being a 3 or 4-0. From when Alejandro Garnacho scored the game's opener earlier on, a golazo of an overhead kick that will be remembered for years to come, it gave United a good platform to then pick Everton off on the break. The Toffees were always chasing the game and were extremely wasteful in front of goal. They could still be playing now and they still wouldn't score. Manchester United teenager Kobe Mino was outstanding, and you get the feeling that he's going to cement a place in that starting lineup with the likes of Christian Eriksen, Sofian Amrabat and Casemiro floundering this season. The last game of last week was on a Monday, and it was at Craven Cottage between Fulham and Wolves. A game of penalties, a game of 3 penalties. It ended 3-2 to Fulham, who had the lion's share of the penalties. I don't think I've seen a match before that has 3 penalties in it, unless it was a penalty shootout. But Fulham had 2 and Wolves had 1. Gary O'Neill was once again on the receiving end of VAR decisions going against him. His interview at the end of the match was quite damning. For me, he was right in saying that Carlos Vinicius should have been red carded for headbutting Max Kilman. I agree with that. But Tim Ream also should have received his second yellow card after giving away a penalty. And both penalties, though, were soft, especially the last one. You could argue one of them could have been given, but for both to be given is a bit criminal. But yeah, Wolves have had key VAR decisions go against them against Manchester United, Sheffield United, Newcastle and Fulham. So, hopefully that they have another one against them today at the Emirates. Anyway, so that was last week's results. So now coming into this week's fixtures, we start at the Emirates. Arsenal against Wolves. I've gone 3-0 to Arsenal. I wasn't sure. I was thinking, could it be 2-0? Could it be a draw? 3-1. I've settled for 3-0. I just feel that Arsenal are coming into their own now, especially after their midweek 6-0 win against RC Lens. Arsenal in front of their home faithful, you know, they usually score a lot of goals. They're starting to get clean sheets now, and you just feel like they're getting momentum going together, especially with that win against Brentford. And yeah, the chance for them to extend their lead at the top of the table is one I'm sure they're going to want to take. Also, Wolves, albeit they've played well this season, around mid-table, they don't travel well and already lost to Fulham on Monday. So another trip to London's probably going to end negatively for them. Next game is the relegation six-pointer between Burnley and Sheffield United. I'm tipping Burnley to get their second win of the season and their first home win of the season. Burnley's only win so far has come up against Luton away. So, I mean, if they can't beat Sheffield United, then surely they're doomed. But I'm backing them to get a win here. Perhaps Vincent Kompany can get a win here and start building something, start building some confidence and getting some goals. Next game is Brentford and Luton Town. I've gone 3-1 to Brentford. I feel Brentford, on the whole, have a good home record. They did play relatively well against Arsenal. They subdued them to an extent, but I feel they'll have too much for Luton. Luton don't really travel well, and I'm sure they're going to put up a good fight, but I just feel like people like Mbeumo are going to they're going to score. I think Mbeumo is going to probably get 1 or 2 goals here. Visser is a bit hit and miss, probably get a goal in this one. So yeah, Brentford win. At the City ground, Nottingham Forest lost for the first time since April last weekend when they lost to Brighton. I fancy them to get a win over Everton. I feel Everton will be smarting from the points deduction and the defeat to Man United last week Sunday. Nottingham Forest have Odoi back. They looked a threat on the break against Brighton last week. I just feel they're gonna just edge this one, but it wouldn't surprise me if it's a draw. But I've gone 2-1 to Forest. The big one today, Newcastle against Man United. Newcastle have already beaten United in the cup 3-0, I think it was, at Old Trafford, and they must feel aggrieved with their result against PSG on Tuesday, where they played really well defensively, strong defensive rear guard, but the referee gave a late penalty to Kylian Mbappe. I think it was in the 98th minute. But I feel based on how they played against Chelsea, I should expect them to beat Man United, who incidentally are the form team in the league. But you could say they've been playing teams they should be beaten. But I'm going to go for a 3-1 win to Newcastle because I feel like Anthony Gordon and Alexander Isak are on top form, and I'm sure both will get on the score sheet. All right, for tomorrow's games, a game I'm really intrigued with is the Chelsea and Brighton game. Brighton have played themselves into form. I believe they're top of the Europa League group with another win against AEK Athens on Thursday. They lost to Chelsea in the Carabao Cup, but that was after they made a few changes. So it'll be interesting now with people like Ansu Fati, Matoma, Evan Ferguson, and João Pedro on top form, who they put in there, and if Chelsea can handle them. Chelsea, I'd expect Christopher Nkunku to be back in the squad. I don't think he'll start, but they'll probably go with Palmer, Sterling, and then probably, Nicholas Jackson, probably keep his place in there, and then they'll probably bring in Nkunku in the second half. But I've gone 3-2 to Brighton at Stamford Bridge. Next game for me is a home banker, Liverpool against Fulham. Fulham don't travel well. Fulham have been poor against the top sides this season, and Liverpool have won every single home game this season. They tend to score threes at home. They tend to score a lot in every game they play. And Mo Salah has been on top of his game, and I expect him to get a couple goals and probably a couple assists in this one. 3-1 to Liverpool. The next game is at the London Stadium between West Ham and Crystal Palace. I've gone 3-1 to West Ham. I feel West Ham have got a couple late winners in the last few games through Thomas Souček. They didn't play well against Bopola in Serbia on Thursday, but they got the win and they qualified in pole position. Crystal Palace have been poor this season. They lost to Luton last week. However, they've got Michael Elise and Eze back. Elise got a fantastic goal last week, but I just feel West Ham have too much for them. Devine Mubama scored his first goal for the club last week. I believe Mikel Antonio still remains injured, but Danny Ings will be vying with Mubama to start. But then Mohamed Kudus and Lucas Paqueta should really inspire the Hammers to a home win. 3-1. Penultimate game of the weekend is between Bournemouth and Aston Villa. Bournemouth are on top form. Like I mentioned earlier, they won 3 from 4. But Aston Villa, free scoring Aston Villa, are the second top scorers in the league. They would want to get this game won because in the next week they've got Manchester City and Arsenal at home. 2 games where they would be underdogs in. So I expect them to get a 3-1 win here. Should be a good game. Also, I think Emre might draft in Leon Bailey and Yuri Tielemans for this one. Because those two combined to get the winner against Tottenham, and they both have points to prove. Moussa Diaby did get a goal on Thursday. So it'll be interesting to see if they do come in. But yeah, 3-1 Villa. And lastly, but not leastly, is one of the games of the weekend at the Etihad Stadium between Manchester City and Tottenham. I believe Man City will win very comfortably. I was thinking, is it going to be a 3 or 4-0? I've settled on a 3-0 win to Man City, which will condemn Tottenham to their 4th game in a row, ending in defeat. So yeah, that's the end of this week's fixtures and results. Obviously, because we've got midweek fixtures, I'll be back on Tuesday previewing that first game, which is at Kenilworth Road between Luton Town and Arsenal. Keep subscribing. We'll be back.